What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. I'm out here sitting in the boat today, actually prepping to go hit the water right here in a couple hours. But I realized that I have not done a rod and reel arsenal in quite a while. So I'm going to be showing you all what rod and reels I'm using for what techniques going into 2025. And I'm going to tell you what rod actions, what reels, what gear ratios, what line combinations I use, and for what particular lures I throw on each one of these setups. So if you don't know, Lews and Mach and Strike King are a sponsor of the channel along with P-Line. So every one of these rod and reel combinations are either Lews or Mach, and then every bit of line that's on my reels are P-Line. So they're great sponsors. I appreciate them sponsoring the channel so much. So we're gonna go ahead and jump into it and talk about each one of these setups and what specific technique I use each one for. So let's go ahead and jump into it. All right, so the one that's the closest to me, and this is a rod and reel that I've used a lot this winter, and it's for a technique that a lot of you all know of, and that is the good old jig head minnow with forward facing sonar. This rod and reel has been an absolute game changer for me because it is just perfect for this particular technique. Now, before I really started using it for the jig head minnow, this is the rod and reel that I threw a jig head swimming minnow on. So like a rage swimmer or paddle tail swim bait on like a 1/4 ounce head or something. And it's perfect for that. So this is a 6'9" medium light. This is the Lews, the Mach Crush, and all the crushes are orange. So this is the Lews Mach Crush spinning setup. And I run 20-pound test P-line. This is the SPINX braid, and I absolutely love this braid. It's really good stuff. If you have a spinning setup, I highly recommend using this braid on it. But I run that down to a 10-pound test P-line, a floor clear leader. So floor clear is a copolymer with a fluorocarbon coating. Absolutely awesome line. But this rod and reel is perfect for that. It's also a really good, you know, like Senko rod or anything that you're throwing that's fairly small and light. It is a perfect setup for that. Very sensitive. The rod action is really good. I like the way it loads up when you're throwing that jig head minnow, and you're able to really work that minnow really good to get that tail action going. So really nice setup there. That's my favorite setup for this, and that's what I primarily use this setup for. Like I said, Lews Mach Crush 6'9" medium light, 20-pound test SPINX braid, and then the good old 10-pound the floor clear. It's a copolymer fluorocarbon blend. Basically, it's fluorocarbon coated. So that's the setup for that. All right, next one up. My cranking setup for the good old crankbait. So I throw a wide range of crankbaits on this. I'm not a big, deep crankbait guy, so I do a lot of shallow cranking, power cranking, stuff like that. I have a flat side tied on here now. But this is the Lews Mach 2 7-foot medium, and this is a moderate fast tip. So the rod loads up very good, it casts very well, and you want a medium rod when you throw in a crankbait or something like that, so when the fish bites it and loads up with those trebles, you don't pull it away from them. So I'm throwing that on the Lews. This is the speed spool. This is the $99 speed spool. I have a ton of these. You're gonna see a lot of these in this video, but the speed spool, this is the Gen 3, and a 5:6 to 1 gear ratio reel. I'm a huge believer in using a slow gear ratio reel when you're throwing moving baits. I'm old school. I like a slow gear ratio. I can speed up way easier. Let me get that right. Way easier than I can slow down. I can speed up way easier than I can slow down. That's a little bit of a word jumble there, but 15-pound test P-Line C21 on there, and that's a copolymer, super strong stuff. I absolutely love it. I've been using that line for a long time, way before P-Line ever came on with the channel. I've been using P-Line for a long time. So C21, like I said, 15-pound test. That's so if I'm cranking in the in the rough stuff, in the rivers, you know, in the treetops and beating off wood and all, you know, 15-pound test is the way that I like to go on that. You can go 12, you can go 10 if you're cranking in a lake or something, but you know, 15 is what I primarily use for mine. So next up, good old jerkbait setup. Now, you all have seen me crack them on the jerkbait this winter if you're a frequent watcher of the channel. So this is actually the new rod that I'm throwing my jerkbait on, and I really, really love this rod for this technique. And this is the Mach 1. So this is the new Lews Mach 1 rod. This is the 6'9" medium light. Now I love a medium light when I'm throwing a jerkbait. It has a really slow action to it. I'm able to get that jerkbait down deep, and then when they do bite it, I don't rip it away from them. So that's the new Mach 1, like I said, 6'9" medium light rod. And then this is the Lews Tournament MP 6:8 gear ratio. The Tournament MP is a really nice reel for the price. I think this is around a $159 price point for this, but really nice reel. And then I also run, this is 12-pound test P-line at C21. So that copolymer, absolutely love that line. But it's a really nice setup, and I love this rod for the jerkbait. I love it. I got it and tied the jerkbait on and immediately fell in love with it. It reminded me of my old custom light, my old Lews custom light that I threw the jerkbait on. But like I said, great rod for that. So that's my jerkbait setup. Next up, the good old Shaky head. So right here we have a Lews Mach Crush. This is a 7-foot medium. So this rod does lean a little bit on the heavier side for a medium action, has a fast action tip, but I really like this for my Shaky head setup. It's super, super sensitive. This is a 30 or a 300 series reel. It's a smaller reel on the setup that I use. I think this is a so this is a 200 on my jig head minnow setup, and this is a 300 on the Shaky head on the Mach Crush. The 7-foot medium combo comes with a 300 on there. But 20-pound test Spinnex braid, that P-line Spinnex braid, and then I'm going to a 12-pound test P-line floor clear leader on this. And I run all my leaders typically around 6 foot long. So that's just my Shaky head setup. I catch a lot of fish on a Shaky head too, but that's the Mach Crush 7-foot medium. So there's my Shaky head setup right there. That's also a good rod for other techniques as well. If you want to throw, you know, I don't know, if you want to throw like a big paddle tail swim bait or something like that, I've thrown it on that rod and reel. Or if you're a spinning rod and reel user and you don't use a lot of bait casters, you know, of course you could throw a creature bait on that. You could throw a small jig, you know, a lot of different applications, but that's my Shaky head setup. Next up, this is my dock skipping setup. Okay, so this is something that I absolutely love doing. Y'all know I love skipping docks. I catch a ton of big fish doing it. And the rod is a 7-foot medium heavy Mach 2. So this rod to me is absolutely perfect for skipping docks. Now a lot of you might say, well, why aren't you using maybe a more expensive, maybe higher end rod for something such as skipping docks, you know, where you really, really have to have a lot of sensitivity and feel? Well, for one, the Mach 2 to me has plenty of sensitivity, plenty, and it has plenty of backbone as well. But this rod has the tip that I love for being able to load up and skip under those docks. The rod is a super, super important aspect when you're talking about skipping docks. And it's one of the overlooked features. You know, if your rod is too stiff, you're not going to be able to skip effectively. You really have to have that tip load up to be able to whip that jig up under those docks. So this is the Mach 2 7-foot medium heavy, and then that is on the Lews Pro SP skipping and pitching reel in a 7:5 gear ratio. The skipping and pitching reel, absolutely phenomenal reel for skipping docks, or if you're pitching a creature bait or a jig around treetops or something. Absolutely phenomenal reel. I love it, and I highly recommend it if you do that type of fishing. So 20-pound test P-line fluorocarbon, 100% fluorocarbon is what I run on my skipping and pitching setups. No different on this 20-pound test P-line fluorocarbon, but that's my jig skipping setup. I absolutely love it. I've caught so many fish on that setup, it's not even funny. So here we have my regular jig setup. So this is more for my casting jigs. This is a little Strike King Bitsy flip jig up there, 3/8 ounce. But this is the Lews Mach jack. This is also a 7-foot medium heavy with a Mach jack. This is the 7/5-to-1 gear ratio reel that comes on there. This is a combo. The Mach jack comes as a combo, and this is a top-notch combo. Like, yeah, I really think it's one of the best rod reel combos that you can buy personally. Super top of the line. The rod is very sensitive. It has really good backbone. I can really jack them good when I set the hook with the jig. Some people might prefer a longer rod. I'm tall and I have really long arms, so when I rear back and slam them, I'm moving a lot of line when I set the hook. So when I use a longer rod, I found that I do tend to break off fish. So I stick with the 7-foot. I don't have any problems with missing fish, even on long casts. But 20-pound test P-line fluorocarbon on this setup as well. Absolutely strong line. I love it. Really, really nice setup. Like I said, Mach jack. Mach jack 7-foot, medium heavy. So next up we have my pitching setup. Okay, so this is pitching the good old rage bug. You see the black and blue rage bug tied on there. And this is a Lews custom speed stick. Now I don't think that they make this rod anymore. I think it has been replaced because this one is, I think, maybe a couple years old, but super sensitive rod, also a 7-foot medium heavy, and that is the Lews Pro SP up there, the skipping and pitching reel in a 7/5-to-1 gear ratio, and then also 20-pound test P-line fluorocarbon, 100% fluorocarbon. So that's my pitching setup. Man, use that rod and reel a lot too. If y'all watch my channel, y'all know that. I crush them on that rage bug, and it's one of my absolute favorite ways to catch them. So next up is my football jig or ball head jig setup, and that is a Lews Mach Crush 7-foot medium heavy with 20-pound test P-line fluorocarbon as well on this. This is the Mach Crush reel. Like I said, this is a combo, 7/5-to-1 gear ratio. I really like this rod. This has a non-split grip. So this has the wind grip, the full wind grip handle right there. Like I said, 7-foot, medium, heavy. That's what pretty much all my casting setups are for jigs, all my rod setups. But like I said, ball head jig, football jig, that's the setup you're gonna see me throwing right there. That Mach Crush has it's a very sensitive rod, has a lot of backbone. You can really jack them with it good. Been using this setup for quite a while, and I absolutely love it for that technique. So next up, this is the Lews Mach jack. This is the 6-foot 10-inch medium light spinning setup. So it has the Mach jack reel on here. This comes as a combo if you order it. Really, really nice rod. Okay, so this rod is a tiny bit stiffer, even though it's a medium light. It's a tiny bit stiffer than the Mach Crush. Yeah, the Mach Crush. So the 6'9" Mach Crush that I throw my jig head minnow on, this Mach jack is a tiny bit heavier. Now I really use this rod a lot for skipping, Cincos, mainly wacky rig Cincos is what I typically use this rod and reel for. So a lot of times if you see my wife fishing in any of my videos, this is pretty much the rod and reel that she used, because she throws that the Mach stick, which is a Cinco style bait, all the time. So this is the one she throws. But super sensitive rod, has a really good backbone, but it has a really, really light tip as well. You can see I do have a jig head minnow tied on this, the 1/4 ounce head, that first gen jaw dropper head. And I actually use this setup in my tournament, and I caught several key fish on it. But 20-pound test braid, 10-pound test P-line floor clear leader on this. And this is also a 200 series reel, so a little bit smaller reel on this setup, but I absolutely love it. You know, like I said, you can use it for a jig head minnow or for a wacky Cinco style bait. Very versatile. You can also throw a small crankbait on it as well. You know, if you're throwing a small balsa crankbait that you really can't throw with a bait caster that well, that's a good setup for that also. All right, so now we got our Lipless crankbait set up. So this is a 7-foot medium, moderate fast, the Lews Mach 1. So this is the new Mach 1 rod. And This rod is absolutely perfect. It loads up very deep in the rod, and I feel like that's so important when you're throwing a treble hook style bait. You know, a lipless, a lot of times you can miss some fish, you can hang them and lose them. So I feel like your rod is very, very important. That is on the Lews speed spool, the new Gen 3 speed spool. Like I said earlier, that's the $99 rod. This is on 15-pound test P-line C21 copolymer. And I really love a copolymer line when you're throwing crankbaits or anything like that. It has a little bit of stretch to it. I think that helps with the hookup ratio and keeping the fish on as well and letting them get it deeper. So, like I said, the Mach 1 7-foot medium Mach 1 with that Lews speed spool in that 5:6 gear ratio. I really, really love that slow gear ratio. I can speed up, I can crank faster, but it's really hard for me to slow down. So very important to me to have that slower gear ratio. All right, up we have next. This is my Chatterbait setup, the good old bladed jig. So this is a 6-foot 10-inch medium heavy moderate fast Mach 2, the Lews Mach 2 rod, 6-foot 10-inch. So I like that 6-foot 10-inch range when I'm throwing a chatterbait. It's a little bit shorter. I'm able to make those really, really accurate casts up around those docks and in those pockets. And this rod loads up very well. It has backbone, but it has that moderate fast tip. So it loads up, and I think it helps the fish get it deeper in their mouth. So this is a Lews speed spool. This is actually the Gen 2. This is that $99 reel, but this is a Gen 2. So this one is a couple years old, but also 15-pound test P-line C21 copolymer. And this setup right here was what won my last tournament for me. This is a tournament that you're going to be seeing here in a couple weeks that I actually won this past weekend. So bladed jig setup, 6-foot 10-inch Mach 2 medium heavy moderate fast, and that's on that 5:6 gear ratio. Like I said, slow it down, you'll catch more fish. Speed is good sometimes, but slow it down. All right, so here we have my spinnerbait setup. This is a Lews Mach 1, so this is that new Mach 1 rod. This is the medium heavy moderate fast, so I throw my chatterbait on the Mach 2 610 medium heavy moderate fast. This is the Mach 1 medium heavy moderate fast. So really, really love this rod. It loads up good, has good backbone, but loads up good when you get one on there. This is the Lews Tournament MP reel, 5:6 gear ratio reel. Once again, that slow gear ratio. And this is that 15-pound test P-line C21 copolymer. So, like I said, keeping it slow. Got to, man, really, the water's cold right now, but you got to really work that thing slow. But even when the water warms up, I never change my gear ratios. I can, like I said, I can reel fast. I'm a high-paced guy, so I can reel that thing fast. So those rod and reels are what's been in my boat, in my rod locker all winter out on the water. So now we're going to get into a little bit more of the summer stuff. Spring and summer are coming. We're warming up. But this is my Topwater setup. So this is my setup for throwing my poppers and my my Topwaters. Not really big walking baits per se, but the smaller, lighter stuff. And this is the 6-foot 8-inch medium moderate fast Mach 2 Topwater rod. So the Lews Mach 2. The short rod really helps me make accurate casts. Like I said, when I'm up, really trying to be accurate around treetops and docks and really placing that topwater around, you know, some cover. You have to be very accurate. But also this rod loads up very good so you don't rip it away from the fish. Lews speed spool. That's that same $99 reel. This is the Gen 2, so it's a little bit older. 6:8 gear ratio reel, 15-pound test P-line C21. That C21 P-line, y'all see, that's on a lot of my reels. I love it. All right, so now we got the big worm. Now y'all know the big worm in the summertime is a really big deal. Got a red shad one on there right now. And this is the Mach Jack combo. This is the 7-foot 3-inch medium heavy. Now, the reason I have a longer rod for this technique is I tend to make some really long bomb casts with this worm when I'm dragging in some deep water, fishing, you know, 20-foot water and all. You want to really be able to move that bait when you're setting that hook. So a 7.3 medium heavy Mach Jack combo. This is a 7.5 gear ratio reel that comes on it. And then 20-pound test P-line 100% fluorocarbon is what I run on that setup. I don't want any stretch when I'm setting that hook, when I'm setting it from a long distance. But the big worm, like I said, that's an absolute catcher when you get into the summertime. So that's my setup for that. All right. These are my two absolute favorite setups that I have. These are the rod and reels that I love using the absolute most. If you watch my channel, you know that. This is the good old Froggy Frog buzzbait. Now, I love a toad buzzbait. I catch a ton of fish on this thing and catch some absolute giants. It's one of my favorite ways to catch them. And this rod and reel right here gets a workout. It absolutely gets a workout. So this is the Lews Mach 2 6 foot 10 inch medium heavy moderate fast. This is actually the same rod that I use for my chatterbait setup. It is perfect for this buzzbait. I can skip it, I can throw it long distances. It has enough power to rip them out of the pads and out of hydrilla, which is super important, but this is the perfect rod to me for your toad buzzbait. I'm throwing that on a 6:8 gear ratio Lews speed spool, and this is the 50-pound test P-line no fade braid. And man, this is one of my favorite ways to catch fish. So I cannot wait to throw this thing. Just holding it in my hand is getting me excited. But like I said, 6 foot 10 inch Mach 2, that's the medium heavy, has that moderate fast tip so you don't rip it away from them when they blow up. Braid is super important on this setup as well. Like I said, 50-pound test, P-line no fade braid, and that's a perfect toad setup. I throw that on a 6:8 Some people like throwing it on a really, really fast reel. Personally, I don't. Like I said, if I want to speed up, I can speed up. Last but not least, and there are other setups that I have as well, like my Alabama rig setup that I don't use a ton, and that's a 7 foot 3 inch Mach 2 rod, and then it's a 5:6 gear ratio tournament MP reel with 50-pound test, no fade braid. I didn't pull that out, but that is my Alabama rig setup. But last but not least, the good old frog setup. Now, y'all know I'm a frog fisherman. I'm a topwater guy. I love getting up in the shallow water, the nasty stuff. That's how I love catching them. So the frog is one way that I love catching fish, and I've caught thousands upon thousands of fish on a frog, and it's really one of my favorite techniques. So rod and reel to me is super important for this as well. And this is the Team Lews Signature Series rod, 7 foot 2 inch, heavy power, but moderate fast. So it's a heavy action rod, but it has a moderate fast tip. And I think that's super important because when that fish eats it, a lot of times it's easy to get excited and rip that lure away from that fish, rip that frog away. And with that moderate fast tip, I think it helps that fish get it deeper in its gullet before you rip it, set that hook and you rip it away from them. So Team Lews Signature Series, 7 foot 2 inch, heavy, moderate, fast. And then this is the Lews Super Duty Reel, 6:8 gear ratio. I don't want a super fast gear ratio when I'm throwing a frog. I want that 6:8 I want to have a ton of power to rip that fish out of that hydrilla and out of those pads. And then I have that on 50-pound test P-line, no fade braid. And like I said, this braid is phenomenal. I love that P-line Spin-X braid, and then the no fade braid. You don't have to worry about it fading or anything. But man, the Super Duty is an awesome reel. That is an awesome reel. You talk about having some power to be able to get a fish out of some heavy stuff. That is the deal right there. So that is my frog setup, and I'm so ready for it to warm up. It's chilly out here right now. The wind is blowing. Like I said, I'm going to get out on the water right now. Probably going to throw the jig around a little bit. But I have a few other setups that I don't throw that much, kind of like I have a glide bait setup. Don't throw a glide bait very much, but that's on the Lews Mach 2, the 7 foot 3 inch medium heavy, 6:8 gear ratio speed spool reel, and 20-pound test fluorocarbon is what I have on that. But I wanted to go over my primary setups. This is stuff that's in my boat all the time, year round, and it's just, I don't know. I love every one of these setups. I love every one. They're in my hands, I mean, at least 3 days a week when I'm on the water, and they perform flawlessly. That's one thing about doing what I do, and I'm so lucky to be able to hit the water as much as I do, and that's because of you all that watch the channel and my absolutely great sponsors that believe in me. And these rod and reels and the line and everything, I rely on them day in and day out. And like I said, they perform flawlessly. So I wanted to let you all know what I was using. Be sure to check out all the links in the descriptions. They go and help out the channel. You know, they go directly, you know, to my sponsors pages, to the Mach and to the Lews setups, and then to the P-line. And like I said, really good stuff. So be sure to check them out. Order you some if you want to try them. I highly recommend them. If I didn't believe in this stuff, I wouldn't tell you about it. That's how I am. You know, if I tell you about something, you best believe that I approve it, and I'm tough on stuff. So if it stands up to what I put it through, then it's pretty dang good. So anyway, I'm going to get all the rod and reels on the deck that I'm going to be using today. I'm going to go get out on the water, hopefully catch some absolute giants. I wanted to do this video just kind of straight through and uncut. So I really appreciate it. And like and subscribe. Go check out my videos where I am fishing, and be sure to tell your friends about the channel. And let's get these subscribers up. Let's get on up to 20,000 and keep on growing in 2025. So I appreciate it so much. I'm gonna get to the water. I will see you next time on Gunfish TV.